speaks, there's a shared pause, a moment of acknowledgement. The food on this table, the land outside the window, the very ability to call this place home, all of it exists because of indigenous peoples whose stewardship shaped these landscapes long before settlers arrived. On Indigenous Peoples Day, this family honors that truth, not with grand gestures, but with gratitude, respect, and a promise to learn. The children listen as stories are told, not the mythological tales of Thanksgiving, but ones rooted in reality and reverence, about the first peoples of this land, about reciprocity. Reciprocity. You and your big words.
I know, I'm sorry.
About caring for the earth that feeds them. It's a quiet kind of ceremony, woven from homesteading rhythms and pagan values. Give thanks, honor ancestors, tend the land, speak truth. Today's episode begins here, in this gentle moment, where tradition is reimagined, history is acknowledged, and gratitude becomes an act of connection. Let's step into that space together.
Welcome, witches, pagans, heathens, spiritualists, and anyone interested in living sustainably. This is
Old Ways, New Days, where the old ways meet the good dirt.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Nell. And each week we explore the sacred art of living close to the land. From compost to covens, chickens to charms,
We're reclaiming self-sufficiency, seasonal living, and ancestral wisdom.
whether you're stirring your cauldron or your soup pot,
This is a space for wild-hearted folk walking the homesteading path with intention, magic, and muddy boots. Alright, it's gonna be one of those days.
Woohoo! Yay!
So, already having troubles.
You hit play, not record.
I know, I meant to hit, yeah. So, alright. I know, I wrote the intro, Nell read the intro.
Yep. Yep, I did. Her and her big words. Get me tongue-tied.
So yeah, so today, because this week is Thanksgiving, or better known, or should be better known as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Correct.
So we're going to talk about that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Which happen to know that I do have many family members that are part, at least a quarter, if not half.
That's awesome. I have a lot of friends who are. My daughter's godmother is 100%. Although I guess if I remember what she said correctly, her dad messed up her lineage, so she's no longer eligible for all of whatevers.
Yeah.
And she can't fix it.
Nice.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, and if I believed my mother, which I didn't, supposedly somewhere in our family lineage there is some indigenous bloodline, but
My youngest child is actually a quarter, and his birthday was yesterday.
oh, well, happy birthday to him. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's right, the 24th, because all your kids were born on the 24th.
They were. Yep, they cannot ever forget each other's birthday.
Just have to remember the month.
Which shouldn't be too difficult. It's just 3 months.
Every 3 months.
Pretty much.
I don't know if you could have planned that.
I did not.
Really tried.
I did not even plan it.
So, in honor of the peoples who came here before us, and and all the plights that they've had to deal with, we've got hopefully a lovely episode for them today, and share some knowledge and a little learning for our listeners, I guess.
And a little learning for us too.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely some research involved.
Yes.
So I'm gonna start off right away. You've probably heard, or maybe not, of land acknowledgement. It's a statement recognizing the indigenous peoples on whose traditional territory you live. It's become more common at events, in people's bios, and on websites. And while it's a start, it's only that, a start. Land acknowledgement without action is only performative. It can even become a way to feel good about ourselves without doing the harder work of material support and systemic change. So why don't we go a little bit deeper?
So start by learning the specific tribes and nations whose ancestral lands you occupy. Use your resources like nativeland.ca. Identify the indigenous peoples of your region, but don't stop there. Read their histories. Learn their current struggles and understand that many of these communities still exist and are actively fighting for sovereignty, land rights, and cultural preservations. For example, if you live in the Pacific Northwest, you might be on a Coast Salish, Chinook, or Nez Perce land. In the Southwest, perhaps Diné or Navajo, Hopi, or Apache. In the Midwest, Lakota, Ojibwe, or Ho-Chunk. Each of these nations has its own history, language, and relationship to the land.
And remember that the land that you garden on, the water you drink, and the air you breathe, all of it exists within a context of colonization. And many, even to this day, treaties are still being broken. People were forcibly removed. Languages and spiritual practices were outlawed. Children were taken to boarding schools designed to, quote unquote, kill the Indian, save the man. And I hate those terms with a passion. And there's South Dakota Indian School that sends out requests for money is still doing that to this day.
Yep.
So they are not a good charity to give to.
No.
So just so you know, this isn't ancient history. Many elders alive today are survivors of this trauma. The effects ripple through generations. As pagans, many of us are drawn to earth-based spirituality because we feel disconnected from our own ancestral lands. We seek recognition, but we must not be careful not to romanticize or appropriate indigenous practices in that search. And we must recognize that our ability to homestead freely on this land is a privilege built on someone else's dispossession.
So a true respect means more than words. It means supporting indigenous-led movements for land back, water rights, and sovereignty. Amplifying indigenous voices rather than speaking over them. Engaging in ongoing education, not one-time learning. Making reparations through financial support, volunteer work, or political action. Land acknowledgement should be the doorway, not the destination.
So how do we learn about, indigenous stewardship without appropriation? That's one of the big questions that we have to ask ourselves and that we have to really pay attention to when we want to support, the native peoples in our communities. And indigenous peoples have been the world's most successful land stewards. The biodiversity we see in many quote-unquote wild landscapes was actually shaped by thousands of years of intentional cultivation, controlled burns, selective harvesting, and reciprocal relationships with plant and animal communities. When Europeans first came over, they thought the wild, untamed, unkempt looking wilderness was just that. their idea of a well-mannered, well-maintained ecosystem was something with walls and fences and fields that were plowed and trees removed. They didn't understand the concept of using plants to support other plants.
So many North American I cannot say that word.
It's going to be a struggle.
Because you put it everywhere, didn't you?
Well, it's the appropriate word to use.
I know. So, many North American indigenous people practice polyculture farming, growing corn, beans, and squash together in a system known as the Three Sisters. The corn provides a structure for beans to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, and the squash spreads across the ground to retain moisture and suppress weeds. It's brilliant, regenerative, and symbiotic. As homesteaders, we can grow the Three Sisters as an act of respect and learning, but we should do so while giving credit, supporting indigenous seed keepers, and purchasing heirloom seeds from indigenous run seed companies when possible. She is so mean to me.
I'm sorry. For millennia, indigenous peoples used controlled burns to manage forests, prairies, and grasslands. This prevented catastrophic wildfires, especially like what we see out west on the Pacific coastline. This encouraged new growth, it supported game animals, and maintained healthy ecosystems. When colonizers outlawed these practices, ecosystems failed. See, there's the word I can't say. Colonizer.
Colonizer? That was easy.
I know, I struggled with that one. Today, we're relearning what indigenous land managers never forgot. Fire is medicine for the land. If you're a rural homesteader, consider supporting indigenous-led fire management programs or learning from indigenous fire ecologists.
So here's the line. We can learn from indigenous practices without taking them. Don't smudge with white sage unless you're indigenous or it's been gifted to you by someone who is. White sage is sacred to many indigenous peoples and have been over-harvested due to commercialization by non-native practitioners.
And there's something I want to note specifically about white sage. So white sage grows with a male plant and a female plant.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you really know how to identify which plant is which, and a lot of people don't, they just harvest whatever. Well, if you harvest the female plant, then there will be no more plants.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is how the plant reproduces, that's how you get a bigger crop the next year, is by leaving the female plants alone. And that, I think, is partly why the plant population of white sage
has
depleted so much, not just from overharvesting, but from people hiking into the mountains or, because it likes the higher elevations and the cooler climates, and, looking off, going off the trail and, ooh, look at that, and
right.
Then just chopping it up and taking it home and then saying, I got some white sage, and then burning it. It's not
how to do it.
No, that's not how you do that.
So in using plants from your own ancestral traditions, rosemary, mugwort, lavender, juniper, or plants that grow abundantly in your region, build relationships with those plants where you are, just as indigenous peoples have always done. Don't claim indigenous spirituality as your own or adopt ceremonies you haven't been invited into. Our work as pagan homesteaders is to reconnect with, quote-unquote, our own ancestral earth-based practices, whether Celtic, Norse, Slavic, Mediterranean, or others, while respecting that indigenous spiritual practices belong to indigenous peoples.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of Americans have lost over many generations. It's been 7, I think, since my ancestors came across.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't bring over the Irish traditions for the most part. There was certain things that the grandmothers kept and passed down, but you lose a lot of that because of the Americanization of the melting pot that is and has America has been known as.
Right. It's like everything. There's always something that's going to dwindle down or out of your family history, but it's also your job to keep that in your family.
Yeah.
You need to keep that alive if you want that there.
Right. And I think a lot of people, they're just so excited to be, their family was so excited to have this new start, a fresh start in a new country where they didn't have to be known as quote unquote whatever, that culture was, and whatever bad associations were with that culture, and then they could just whitewash it or whatever and just kind of blend in
and be rid of it.
And now we're struggling to have an identity, and so especially in pagan communities, they're grasping at anything and everything, and including indigenous practice and spirituality.
Yep.
Back on topic. Indigenous worldviews often center reciprocity. If you take, you give back. If you harvest, you say thank you. If you receive knowledge, you honor it through action. Apply this to your own homesteading practice. When you harvest from your garden, leave offerings. When you learn a traditional technique, credit the culture it came from. When you benefit from living on this land, give something back, whether that's through financial donations, if you can, political advocacy, a voice is always powerful, or supporting indigenous farmers and food sovereignty projects.
So, respect without action is empty. Here are concrete, ongoing ways pagan homesteaders can support indigenous peoples and communities. Consider setting up a monthly donation to indigenous-led organizations working on land rights, cultural preservation, food sovereignty, or environmental justice. Some examples include the NDN Collective, Indigenous Environmental Network, Native American Rights Fund, Seeding Sovereignty, which is Indigenous Seed Saving, or Honor the Earth. You can also support the Land Back movement, which works to return land to Indigenous stewardship. Some groups facilitate this directly.
You can also support indigenous groups by supporting their economy through purchasing seeds from indigenous seed companies, food from indigenous farmers and cooperatives, crafts, arts, and tools from indigenous artisans, so long as they are not sacred items meant only for ceremonial use. Books and media created by indigenous authors and creators, and platforms like Beyond Buckskin, Native Art Market, and 8th Generation highlight authentic indigenous made goods. And all of these will be listed in the show notes.
So, amplify indigenous voices. Follow activists, farmers, and educators on social media. Share their work. Listen more than you speak. When issues affecting indigenous communities arise, pipeline protests, water right battles, land disputes, use your platform and privilege to amplify their voices and demands.
Volunteer and show up. Many indigenous-led organizations need volunteers for community gardens, language revitalization, youth programs, and cultural events. Show up with humility. Follow indigenous leadership and do the work without centering yourself. You are not the it person.
Advocate politically. Contact your representatives about honoring treaties, protecting sacred sites, supporting the Indian Child Welfare Act, funding indigenous-led climate and conservation initiatives, and returning federal lands to tribal stewardship. Your voice as a non-indigenous person can be used to support indigenous sovereignty, not to speak for indigenous peoples, but to back their demands and apply pressure where it's needed.
And then, of course, educate yourself continuously. Read books by Indigenous authors like Robin Wall Kimmerer. He wrote Braiding, Sweetgrass. Winona LaDuke, Nick Estes, and Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz, who wrote An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. Listen to Indigenous hosted podcasts. I haven't found any yet, but I know they're out there. Attend talks and workshops led by Indigenous educators. Make this education ongoing, not a one-time project. And then finally, homesteading as an act of healing and relationship. When done with integrity, homesteading can be a practice of healing for the land, for ourselves, and in small ways for the relationship between those of us who came from settlers and the indigenous people who came here before.
So recognize that you are a guest and a caretaker, not an owner. Even if you hold a deed, the land has memory. It has been shaped by thousands of years of indigenous stewardship. Ask permission before you plant. Speak to the land. Leave offerings of water, tobacco, if culturally appropriate in your area, or biodegradable gifts. Work with the land rather than trying to dominate it.
Industrial agriculture extracts. It takes until the soil is dead. Homesteading, rooted in pagan values, should be regenerative, building soil, increasing biodiversity, creating habitat, and leaving the land healthier than you found it. This mirrors the indigenous principle of thinking 7 generations ahead. Every choice you make should consider the future, the children not yet born, the plants and animals who depend on this ecosystem.
So consider dedicating a portion of your homestead to wildness, a space you don't cultivate, where native plants can grow freely and wildlife can shelter. This is an act of returning space to the land itself as an acknowledgement that not everything is ours to manage. Plant native species that support local pollinators and wildlife. Remove invasive species that harm the ecosystem. These are small acts, but they matter.
Many indigenous communities faced food deserts and lack access to traditional foods due to land loss and environmental degradation. As homesteaders, we can support indigenous-led food sovereignty projects by donating surplus produce to indigenous community centers or food programs, supporting indigenous farmers through CSA programs or farmers markets, preserving and sharing heirloom seeds, particularly those from indigenous seed-keeping traditions, and learning about and advocating for the return of traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering rights.
So make it a ritual. Before you harvest, say thank you to the land, to the plant, and to the people who cared for this land long before you. Let that gratitude move you forward in action. How can I give back today? It might be a donation. It might be pulling invasive species. It might be learning a new piece of history and sharing it with others. Small acts, sustained over time, become transformation.
Honoring indigenous, there it goes, I can't do it.
Yes!
Honoring Indigenous Peoples Day isn't a once-a-year ritual. It's a daily practice woven into how we homestead, how we relate to land, and how we show up in the world. If you have children, nieces, nephews, or young people in your life, teach them the truth. Teach them that whose land they're on. Teach them about the beauty and resilience of indigenous cultures, not just as a tragic past, although that is important, but as living, thriving communities with vibrant futures. Counter the sanitized version of history they might learn in school. Create space for indigenous authors, storytellers, and educators in their lives.
So when you hear people romanticize untouched wilderness or talk about North America as empty before colonization, speak up. The land was managed. It was loved. It was home. When you see cultural appropriation, plastic, Indian costumes, commodified spiritual practices, misuse of sacred symbols, call it out gently but firmly.
If there are indigenous communities near you, look for ways to build authentic, reciprocal relationships. attend public cultural events, support their businesses, listen and learn, but never center yourself. This work isn't about earning cookies or feeling like a good settler. It's about doing what's right, whether anyone sees it or not.
So remember, paganism is about relationship. At its heart, paganism is about relationship with the earth, the seasons, the cycles of life, and death. If we claim that identity, but ignore the people who have held these relationships for millennia, we're practicing a shallow spirituality. True earth-honoring practice requires us to honor all relationships, including the uncomfortable ones, the ones that ask us to comfort privilege, to make reparations, to change. Homesteading can be a spiritual practice, but only if it's rooted in justice.
So thank you for joining us on this reflection for Indigenous Peoples Day and what it means to homesteading with integrity and respect. This work is ongoing. It's uncomfortable at times, but it is necessary.
So as you tend your garden, your chickens, your small plot of earth, remember the hands that tended to it first. Let that memory move you toward an action, toward reciprocity, toward repair.
May we all walk more humbly on this land. May we all honor the original keepers, not just with words, but with our choices, our resources, and our solidarity.
Until next time,
keep learning,
keep listening,
and keep walking the old ways
into new days.
Nell, I almost forgot.
No, you did forget.
I did. So, I know we just ended, quote unquote, the episode, but I have an announcement to make.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I love to give people things, I'm doing a contest.
Oh boy.
I know. So, we have 27 followers. Followers on Facebook.
The Book of Face?
Yes, the Book of Face. So I am going to collect all of their names, and I'm going to put their names in a hat. And for every one of them that tags a new person on Facebook and they become a new follower, they will get another additional entry into this contest.
Ooh,
and
yes.
What
does this contest entail?
This contest entails the prize of a dehydrator.
Ooh.
Yes. So, because I know people, if they're anything like me, people don't spend money on themselves.
Yeah, I try not to spend money on myself. I spend it on things that, like, my boyfriend needs at the house. And if we break up, it stays with him because I'm not going to need it. It's what he needs for his place.
Right. So, and people move around a lot, especially nowadays.
Right.
So, yeah. So I want, to help increase followership and listeners and, just general awareness of what we're trying to do. I want to incentivize people.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So, please share, like, follow. If you are on any of the platforms like Apple Podcast or Spotify, or we're now on iHeartRadio also.
Yep. We are on it all. You can just look us up on Google at, just find us Old Ways, New Days podcast, and we're one of the first ones to show up.
Yeah.
And it tells you where you can find us.
But, reviews would definitely help. If you give us a review on one of whatever platform you use.
That throws us out there even more.
Well, but I will give you another entry. How about that?
Whoa!
I know!
So that's not only an automatic entry just for following us.
On Facebook, yes.
But another entry per person that they invite.
That they tag
that ends up following us.
That ends up following us.
So that could be endless.
That could be endless.
And then yet another one for each review you leave.
Yeah.
Just think how many entries you could have.
I know. So the deadline will be, because I want to be able to get to, the dehydrator to them by Yule. So we'll say the deadline will have to be December 15th. That should be a good day.
Hopefully. And I will ship it out.
Okay. All right.
Or deliver.
Well, I mean,
depending on who gets it.
Yeah, well, we do have 2 people, or at least 2 downloads from Singapore, so that was amazing to see.
Yeah, that one might be a little difficult to send to.
Well, definitely to get to them by Yule.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then whoever wins will reach out personally and get your info that way.
Well, one of the admins will, at least, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. So there you go. That's my big announcement. Yay. A contest. So like, share, invite people.
I'm going to have to do it myself, so I might have a chance to win it.
Well, yeah, even the admins can tag people, I guess. I suppose we could do that. They are doing all the work on the Facebook page.
Yep.
And they do the editing.
They do. They do a lot of our work.
Right.
So I feel sorry for them.
So yeah, so there you go. Again, like, share, review.
Like, share, and review.
Yep. All right. Till next time.
This has been Old Ways, New Days.